Hello, I thought this week we'd have a quick look at how I used Procreate on the iPad to add a bit of colour to a pen sketch. So here's the original biro sketch, just done with a big biro. Didn't spend too long on it, which I scanned in. You could take a photo of it with your iPad if you wanted, and then brought it into Procreate. So here it is, and there's a few things I did with it before I started adding the colour. The first thing I did was adjust the level slightly. You see how there's a bit of the writing on the other side of the page coming through. So I used the curves tool on the layer, and this is white at this end and black at this end. And you can see most of the information's here. This lump here in the greys, that's the grey of the paper. The actual drawing part is probably this lump here. So I just drag that across a little bit, which makes the white pure white. The creamy part of the paper is now white, and you can bring this back a bit just so the lines don't disappear. You can adjust it a bit, and having this pure white will be helpful for a later step, which I'll show you in a moment. The other thing I did was quickly flip it horizontally, which you can do with your finger. If you swipe to the side, flip horizontally, and that reveals any kind of problems with the proportions that might be there, which you couldn't see anymore because as you were drawing you just got used to it. So here it just feels like the drawing's got a slight kind of sheared to the left. So using the transform tool with the arrow here on freeform, I just grabbed hold of one of the corners, pulled it in, pulled out the bottom slightly, just kind of pulled it around a bit just so it felt right. I mean, you can't do that with your real sketch, but you've got these tools for your digital things, so you may as well use them. When you're happy with it, you just do OK, and then you can flip it back the other way, and hopefully it will look better than it did before. You've just corrected a few little things. And then once you've got that, you're ready to start doing some colour. And the easiest way to work with a line drawing like this that's on white paper is to make the layer, use one of these overlay modes. See the little N there for normal. If we make that a multiply, that makes anything that's white transparent and anything that's black solid, and in between a scale in between. So grey stuff is half transparent. So that's the easiest way to suddenly make all your page disappear and leave you with just the lines. And that then means that you can add other layers underneath and start colouring beneath it. So I'll have a look at some of those now. Just delete this one. Here's the actual one I used. Stick that to multiply. And then the first thing I did was add a new layer underneath, and I just filled in the shadow areas using the big square brush. That's one of my favourites there, this flat brush. And you'll see there, if you can scribble away, and you'll be able to just faint. I used a very dark blue rather than pure black, which meant I could still see the lines slightly there showing through. So I just did that on a separate layer, and then started to think about the highlights. I thought, well, there's probably some sky or something reflecting on these top surfaces, so I added a cold blue kind of sheen at this far edge of the roof, the bonnet, and this top edge of the front wing. Pretty subtle, probably it's not vital, that one. And then started adding a bit of colour. And I was going for a sort of sandy gold colour. And the basic idea was to add colour at this top edge here mostly. This is kind of where the darkest part would be. I'm using this airbrush kind of tool, soft brush, just to sort of darken it here and then let it fade out as it gets lower, because being a shiny car, it would reflect this light area of the floor and be lighter. So you can just let that floor colour, page colour show through there. And the same when you get to this back edge, you let the colour fade out for the same reason. As things become a shallower angle to your eyes, they reflect more. So they again would reflect this grey, this brown background. So I just let the colour kind of fade out. And I did end up eventually beefing that up again. It was a bit subtle, so I duplicated that layer and beefed up the gold feel a bit. Then I carried on and added some greys to the vinyl roof. Let's get the rest of the car showing. Which again I let kind of lighten a bit towards the back edge. Then I added the fun stuff, the bright highlights on the tops of the chrome, the headlights, little details on the grille, some little specular highlights on these curved surfaces where they would reflect the light source, and bits of chrome trim like the door handles and this trim down the side. So just some pure white almost, just to pick out these window frames. That makes a big difference, that layer. Kind of makes it pop a bit. Then I added some subtle details, just some wheel trim details. I didn't want to get bogged down with drawing full-on wheel trims and things, so a simple circle seemed to do the job. And then finally, I got carried away with some more glows. I added some kind of glow to the highlights that were there with a soft airbrush on white. Just kind of added some little patches of glowing colours. So there was pretty much all the important layers there. There was one last one I added here, which was a paper texture. So this is just, if I stick this to normal again, and 100%, this is a piece of grey card that I scanned in. And if you bring that in, take the opacity down and put it to something like overlay, it just allows the picture to show through, but also adds a bit of paper texture and grain to everything, which I quite liked. I was going for that kind of Canson paper feel. But I felt at this point that the gold colour wasn't really working so well, even though I'd strengthened it by duplicating the layer. And so I merged those two layers together. So now we've got the colour, see the colour's all on that one layer. And using this hue, saturation and brightness control on the layer, you can just play around with these sliders. So you can have a pink one, blue one. Certain colours suit certain ages of car better than others. So these kind of funky 60s psychedelic colours, like Viper green, doesn't quite look right on a Rover. Whereas the less saturated and darker sludgy colours, like or English racing green, or these kind of browns and things, they're much more in keeping with the type of car. You can always take the saturation out and have a kind of black one if you like. It's quite fun. Yeah, in the end I went for a kind of a, ooh, that's quite nice, isn't it? Maroon's a good old 70s colour. But in the end I went for this kind of English racing green type colour. So that's pretty much a simple process for adding a bit of colour to a pen sketch. Hope you enjoyed seeing that process, and let me know in the comments if you did, and I'll do a few more.